I want to talk about another leftover. As we're coming into Christmas season, Christmas is something we celebrate tremendously. But usually, when holidays originally begin, they begin with a purpose and a meaning, and that purpose is very specific to that holiday. They're designed to honor and remember something or someone worth celebrating. But typically, after many years, the meaning is lost, the meaning is forgotten, but the celebrating keeps continuing. And that pattern applies to pretty much all national holidays. The celebration continues long after the purpose is lost. Sometimes we even change the name of the celebration. My Army buddies used to say, we'll drink to anything. They didn't care, whatever the celebration was. But there are always those who do remember, those who are deeply invested. And Christmas is one of those long lost holidays that has lost its meaning by and large. Christmas, of course, was originally named after Christ. And early celebrations were about his birth and his life. And for a handful of people, they still are. But for the vast majority, they are not. I have no desire to spoil the fun of Christmas that's always associated with that time of year. In fact, just the opposite. But I have come to understand that celebrations are always more intense and more fun when they're about something important. And can we recover that? So what made Christmas so powerful, so important in the beginning years? It was the all important It was all the all importance of the one person, the one time in history that God came to earth, that Christ came to earth. So, to give context, the followers of God in the Old Testament times were aware of a central theme of the Bible that it was really built around. God's Son was going to come to our earth and live on earth as one of us. He was called the Messiah or the Christ and was introduced as the most anticipated event in history. They weren't told when, but they were given many, many clues to identify who this Son of God would be when he came to earth as a human, who this Christ would be when he came to earth. So then the New Testament became the identifying clues of the Christ. It's kind of built around that. All of the four Gospels, the Christ who had been anticipated for so many centuries. Was he really here? Who was he? How did you know? In fact, the whole history was changed by this person who came to earth. The whole history of the world, God lived among his people. And the world remains changed to this day because of him. That's the biggest event that has ever happened. What are some of the clues about the coming of Christ to earth? There are so many, but let's start with one in Isaiah 9, 6, and 7. For a child will be born to us. It's going to be a child born. A son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. That's the name of a child born. There will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of God, the Lord of hosts, will make this happen. We just go on and on and on with more and more clues. We also can mention the surprise appearance of the angel lighting up the sky and shocking a bunch of shepherds who were just minding their own business. And the angel said, and I paraphrase, "Don't be scared. I'm bringing wonderful and joyful news to the whole world. Today, the Savior of the world was born in David's hometown," which would be Bethlehem. "He is Christ the Lord." The baby born is Christ the Lord. That was a clue. We've known about him for centuries. And now you tell us that Christ the Lord is a baby in Bethlehem. How could that be? But those shepherds were convinced. They believed it. Everyone knew the name Christ. It was a household name, even among uneducated shepherds. But to be told he had finally come as a baby, born to a virgin who was first engaged and later married, this is the same person that often appeared in the pages of the Old Testament as the Christ, the Son of God, belonging to the Trinity of God. There were hundreds, way more than hundreds of other clues listed in the Bible to identify him when he came. There could be no mistake. And there's far, far too many to even list. They included positive evidence that he would exhibit the power of God to work incredible miracles that no human could ever possibly do. But they also included negative clues that he would be despised and rejected by many people who didn't want God in their lives. And the biggest clue was that he would be killed. The biggest clue was death by crucifixion, followed by resurrection. Coming from Psalm 22 and Isaiah 53, just for starters. Of course, there can never be enough evidence to convince people who refuse to believe and who don't want to believe. And all of life tells us that. You can't convince somebody who doesn't want to believe. So the big question was answered many times over. How would they know which human being was also the Christ, the Son of God and Savior? The wise men figured out that Jesus is also Christ. John the Baptist believed it. The two old saints in the temple figured it out. Didn't take many clues for them. The woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, all of the disciples believed, Nicodemus believed, and eventually millions more were convinced that this person, Jesus, was the Christ of the Old Testament, the Son of God. And true to the Old Testament predictions, he was also rejected and ridiculed and crucified by those who saw him as a threat. That crucifixion and that resurrection completed his purpose for coming to earth. And the rest is just frosting on the cake. He adds indescribable benefits to his death and resurrection. So the Christmas story is this. Anyone who discovers that Jesus of Nazareth, an ordinary looking human being who was born in a manger, grew up in Nazareth, anyone who discovers that he is also the Christ, the Son of God, and anyone who believes that, he will change their lives. This Christ will change their life and throw in heaven for free. John comes to the conclusion of his gospel with this statement in John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. Here's what he writes. Many other signs or miracles Jesus also performed in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but those which have been written are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And believing that, you may have life in his name. That really sounds too easy, doesn't it? Too simple. Jesus did all the work. We only need to believe that the man, Jesus, and the Son of God, Christ, are the same person. Christ didn't come to earth. Christ did come to earth as God promised, and his earthly name is Jesus. And discovering that, it is cause for the greatest celebration in all of human history. And that is it.